One.
Welcome to the Spaceless Realms Podcast. And today we're going to be talking about change. So, interestingly enough and predictably enough, we decided to switch it up, and I'm the one that's going to be doing the interview. So, I'll be asking questions to Logan here, which is the one and only Wolverine, literally live from Mutant Academy, live from the Métis Lodge, and live from the Gulf Islands and unceded native territory. We are resisting the invasion of the monarchy, of oligarchy, of plutocracy. And change to me happens in the process of resisting the forces that are trying to instill a false form of order or a status quo, which actually prevents us from evolving, from changing. And that would be the forces of colonialism, the forces of white supremacy, of patriarchy, of queerphobia, misogyny, exploitation, abuse, racism, systemic inequities, environmental disasters. It's very simple and it's all linked in together. Yep.
What is a systemic inequity?
So it's like wrongs by the system, essentially, something that's been unequitable towards us systemically. So the colonial system does things every day. They lock people up in ICE and FEMA camps. They lock people up in juvenile detention center, like youth. They abuse them, they rape, they torture, they kill. The animal ag industry is a huge, part of that. It's literally as many beings being murdered every 5 days. It's like billions of beings being murdered every 5 days, the equivalent of almost the entire wars and genocides we've created in human history and human casualties. In 5,000 years, we murder that many animals, land animals, in 5 days for animal ag. So it's insane shit. And change to me starts with realizing that our evolution, our aging process, our lifespan is directly dependent on the amount of suffering in the world and the vibrational frequency of the planet.
Wow. That's deep. Thank you. Okay, that ties into a tarot card that I just pulled. It is the world card. The world. The
Yo, and that's
all-encompassing
exactly what we're talking
world.
about today.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
change is
the ultimate
your life.
tarot card for change. Change the world. Literally, just piece the podcast and the card together, and it makes it makes entire sense.
Yeah. Yeah, oh no, change is very, very hard for some people. And especially when you've been doing like the same thing over and over and you just get stuck in that routine of what that who that makes like what that routine makes you feel like, how you identify to the current situation that you are currently in your life. And then when change hits, sometimes it's like a reality check, like it can either shift either way. It could be for your growth or it could be for your demise, both of the polar opposites.
Very
And
true.
yeah, and like because we are parts of nature, letting go to the change is part of the process. Because I feel like whenever I've fought the change and fought trying to control the outcome of how things were going to play out, then I always kind of involved my ego when I was doing that. So then things went against me. So yeah, from now on, I'm learning how to let go. It's a never ending process. I'm sure we'll truly know when to let go when we truly pass on from this realm and into the next. So it's just like a gradual buildup of learning this universal mastery and how to be in harmony with the universe and with the ebbs and flows of life, like change is so powerful. And there's a lot of things in the system that keep us stuck and stagnant and a lot of those kind of energies. So yeah, Kalki, how do we embrace change?
You're tying in with the end of that question when you talked about letting go and accepting death. I think like a long time ago, a good friend of mine that I took as a teacher for a bit was actually telling me that we live in a world controlled by death cults and that religions control people through a death cult, which is a fear of death, a fear
Yeah.
of death and suffering.
Mhm.
So they tell them we minimize your death and your suffering, we keep you alive and healthy as long as we can. And in exchange, you're going to be afraid of us, of God, of life, of being a sinner. It's like Alcoholics Anonymous all over again, but like on a massive scale, like on the whole planet for everyone. And that to me, change can't happen when there's suppression of supernatural realities and of magic and of mystical doctrines and of matriarchy and of the queer theory of the rainbow, suppression of youth, suppression of elders. You can't have change in a
Suppression of
society without
elders.
acknowledging what the forces against change are.
Bro, you said suppression of elders. You're the only person who I've heard say that. And that is so true. Like elders are very suppressed. Like that kind of consciousness thinks that life is over for them or things aren't going to get better. But hey, if you can flip that perspective and make the most out of the last years that you may have in this life, then that's amazing. If you can inspire and respect an elder like that. Like that's so I really like how you said that, man.
Yeah, no, I grew up very influenced by my matriarchal elders, to be honest. Like even my elder the other day on my Sun Lodge elder was also on just sharing something in a Facebook group that for the reserve that we're on. And it's just there's always really powerful messages that pop up everywhere from, what we call the third age in French in Quebec, or golden age, or that we call it the golden age or the third age. That's the age of wisdom, right? It's the ultimate age for them to be repositories of wisdom for the entire community, of stories, of knowledge, of medicines, of food, of like all kinds of, entertaining and interesting and scientifically sound and accurate statements. But then in this day and age, what happens with youth and elders, both of those categories, the first and the third age, as we call them, is that they're both suppressed and oppressed in the process. Like their voices are suppressed and they're oppressed in the process, and they're blocked, and it's a world controlled by adults, but the adults let puppet elders that aren't even aware of who they are, like Joe Biden or like Donald Trump, or old creepy white men that are barely even alive or awake, and they let people like that run an entire country of adults who pretend they're in charge, while the youth and the elders are being abused at the same time. It's really crazy, and we have to realize that in order to change. To me, it's like, and letting go of that death cult, letting go of like that fear of death, to me is one of the most important aspects.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, because if you're afraid of death, then you're afraid to let go and
Yeah, you'll
surrender.
do anything to stay
Process.
alive. You'll do the, yeah,
Mm.
please, please, please. I'll do a slave labor job. I'll do this thing. I'll do that thing. I don't want to die. I don't want to suffer. Just give me a
Mm.
nice little like proverbial carrot at the end of a stick, and I'll keep moving. I'll keep moving.
Yeah.
Like
Mm.
it's crazy because we don't realize what we've embedded ourselves into, and how cheap it is to live off grid versus on grid. But everybody insists on living on the grid because they're like off grid. Oh, like so many people dream about having an off-grid life, but at the end of the day they're on the grid almost all the time, and then when the occasion or the opportunity comes to go off-grid and to live a life like that, they're like, well, I got my 9 to 5 job. I mean, I need to do this and I need to do that. I don't know. I'm like, whoa, you would rather do that and do the rat race in society than actually go learn to live with nature indigenously again? That, to me, it makes no sense.
Wow. Yeah, it's like a straight disconnect, you know?
It should be, cities to us should be like when you used to think about going to Disneyland. City should be like you go and hang out in the city and go maybe party a weekend in the city, and then you live the rest of the weekend in nature.
Hmm. Hmm.
But people do it the other way around. They come once in a while in nature, and then they live in the city their whole life.
Yeah, that's weird. Yeah.
Because you're living in between. You're at a perfect balance between both.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, honestly, nature has been the best teacher in my life. Like especially like when I was homeless for like a year and just like being in nature all the time and just observing how the seasons change and how like animals are, insects, plants. Yeah, it's like it's a very strong correlation between how our souls evolve and also how nature grows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, change to me also can only happen through communicating with those beings, through having a symbiotic relationship with the plants, with the animals. Then you cannot have a symbiotic relationship towards a being that you murder and eat. It just doesn't make sense. People
Yeah.
don't seem to get that. A lot of people think it's their right to murder and eat children. I'm like, no, it really isn't.
Yeah.
They don't get that. Change will never happen for anybody who doesn't realize that.
Hmm. Okay. I'm gonna pull something up on the screen. I want to see if this works. How do I do this? Okay, there we go. Boom. All right, can you see my
Yeah, yo, that's dope.
yeah, this is the death and rebirth card that I just picked as well. So yeah,
Wow.
what can you tell me about this card?
Death and rebirth, man. That looks like a portal to another dimension in the midst of nature in the shape of a face and a mujahideen warrior that's like some kind of a mystical magi or something that's floating through different dimensions in a rainbow spectrum. This is crazy. The art on there is unprecedented. I
Yeah.
mean, what couldn't I say and what could I say about death and rebirth? That to
Mm.
me is like the ultimate card. Like we have the first card being the world. So you have to change the world. And what do you have to do for that? You have to learn to be like a phoenix essentially and learn to die, to be reborn every day, every moment of this existence. That's what I wanted to talk about earlier, is that there's a quantum shift that happens on a daily basis, which is all comprised of bits and pieces of random freestyled information that pops up as thoughts in our heads that are given voice through certain words and languages. But at the end of the day, just describing that is also a quantum portal that I just hopped into. Now I'm being sidetracked and I'm specifically explaining the sidetrack of the nature of quantum reality.
Bro,
That's actually altering quantum reality. If I kept talking about the way that that card affects us and I jumped into a different train of thought, like say right now I said, okay, that's a portal back to nature, that's the only way to have death and rebirth, that's what we were talking about, but I had skipped the wormhole part, then suddenly we'd be in a different quantum reality already. That would be a different podcast, a different show, and I could say a million different things. I can go snap, and then all of a sudden I make people realize that's individuality. It's not the snap itself that's individual, but realistically, if you do unpredictable movements, it's kind of like a drunken master, like Jackie Chan in a movie, and you can't predict his movements. So if you're creatively, artistically, you know, prolific, or if you want to put it that way, if you're, I don't even want to say gifted, maybe it's not exactly the right word, but if you're active creatively or artistically in your expressions, then essentially you're manifesting different forms of quantum reality. But if you just repeat, this is the good book, this is the only good book, Yahweh is my God, he is a good God, then you're not thinking creatively anymore. You're basically just following what everybody else has told you to do. So the creativity happens in the unique individual resistance against a system of oppression that's trying to convince everyone that it's easier to just let go and do what everyone else does.
wow. Yes, there's like two different forms of letting go, either letting go to the system or letting go to your highest potential.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, because some people say I let go. Sometimes they're like, this was too complicated. I had to let go. I had to let it go. I couldn't argue anymore. My boss was being an asshole. And I told him, I wanted to tell him that I really hate him and he's racist and he's abusive. And like, but I told him, I was like, I'm sorry, I made a mistake and I'll change next time. Like people, they have this idea of who they want to be inside of them, but most of them don't actually actualize that to their full like supernatural potential, because they realize the hierarchy in society that keeps them in their place is threatening to them. They don't want to lose their condo, their house, their car, their mortgage, their job, their security, their financials. They're not willing to challenge authorities on a certain level because they're worried it's going to affect their life negatively. But there's certain people, and I'm not trying to say that I'm the only one out there. Obviously, there's a lot of other people, but like I'm in a category of people where I'm like, I've lost my jobs, but they never even managed to fire me for what I said because I was so truthful that they just had to like end my contract when the contract was over or when it had been extended, or say that they didn't have enough budget to hire me the next year. But they weren't even able to fire me. And I was able to say crazy ass shit to people in administrative positions of power and influence. I mean, I ended up writing a letter to the mayor warning him that, what did he want to have as a legacy in like 100 or 200 years from now when people mentioned his name, Don Iveson, the mayor of Edmonton. I said, what do you want your legacy to be as remembered? The guy who pretended he was going to end poverty or the guy who really did?
Hmm. Wow.
So, and he took the time to read it and he sat there, and I felt almost like Tupac in a sense when he wrote Letter to the President. I was like, okay, this is the closest I can get to the president in my city. It's like writing a letter to the mayor and being at the round table with them and changing laws about discrimination and poverty and abuse and racism in my own city. So I feel like I've been a part of the change in that sense, but I can't say I am anymore. It's an active, constant thing. You have to constantly reiterate that. So to me, change, it starts with each and every one of us. And the best quote that we talked about many different times, but I just want to throw that out there again, and I'll leave it at that. And then I'll tell you, please close the podcast and give us like any of the thoughts that you could ponder that would actually, be beyond the blessings and everything else that would actually help people in that to embody that change. But I was going to say, never
Embody
doubt
that
that a few,
change.
mhm.
Yeah,
Never
go on.
doubt that a few thoughtful, committed individuals can change the world, for indeed it is the only thing that ever has. Margaret Mead.
Hmm. Embody that change. Be the change. Yeah. All right. I bless the space. Thank you for everything that we shared today. Thank you to all the energies that tuned in to experience this never-ending well of growth and energy, you know? So thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I hope you have an amazing day, everyone who tuned in to watch this. And yeah, we'll catch you guys in the next one.
That's
Peace.
perfect because Yasmin just hit me up. So peace.
Nice, bro. Nice.